to wait a few minutes to make sure we've got everybody in, or do you want to get started?
We're all here from our side of things. I think we should get started. You're muted, Melissa.
Okay. We have 50 plus people on here, which is good. I guess, Jesse, do I need to stop sharing so that you can share your slide and then I'll share my slide again? Correct?
All right, welcome. You should have a poll pop up when you enter. Please complete that if you have not already done so. Members of the public, if you wish to speak or ask questions, use the raise hand function. You will be called in the order in which your hand was raised. The tech facilitator will unmute you, but you may also receive an on-screen prompt to unmute your device. People attending via phone can use the *6 to unmute. And be patient a second. I'm going to share a little bit more information on hand raising. Okay, for raising your hand for Windows and Mac users, you should see an icon similar to that at the usually at the lower part of your screen. You can also use the Alt-Y keyboard shortcut to raise and lower your hand, as well as the Option Y. You want to be careful that you don't hit it twice and lower your hand. For Linux users, it's a similar icon. Android and iOS on phone users, it may look a little different, more similar to the icon shown below. You tap that to raise and lower your hand. Most should look similar to the raise hand below here, as shown for web users. And if you want to join, if you're joined by telephone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. All right, I believe that's everything.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jesse. So you threw me with the *6, so I'm going to go have to change something in a minute, but we will get there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Welcome everybody to the kickoff meeting for Bus Rapid Transit Phase 2. I think Mayor Satya is going to kick us off, and then we will jump in from there. I see that Bob has raised his hand. I think what we're going to try and do is get through the presentation so that we can have lots of time to answer questions. So Bob, if this is a technology question, I don't know, Jesse, if that's something you want to answer, or if we just want to, or if Bob, you're just raising it so we know you're in the queue for future. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to the mayor to kick us off tonight.
Thank you, Melissa, and thanks everybody for joining us tonight. It's great to see so many people interested in this project, and I want to thank all the staff that have been working on this, and those of you that are here tonight as well. Many of you have probably heard me speak about Bus Rapid Transit before, but Bus Rapid Transit will provide fast, frequent, reliable, and affordable transit service for Madison, and I'm very excited that we are taking this next step forward. Transit has proved to be an essential service for our community during the COVID-19 pandemic, and Metro has proven its ability to operate in a way that keeps everyone healthy and safe. With our new bus cleaning protocols, in fact, I think that Metro buses are cleaner than my car. So I want to appreciate and thank the folks at Metro that have really, over these past months, figured out ways to keep our drivers safe and our passengers safe and keep our buses clean. And so BRT, I think, is an important step forward for this essential service for us to be able to not just continue to provide this for folks that need to get around, but improve our service. It will be an affordable transportation option for our families and residents, and will hopefully greatly improve connectivity between our low-income and transit-dependent neighborhoods and centers of employment and activity. Again, focusing on getting people where they need to be, particularly for particularly our essential workers for employment. BRT will reduce transit travel times and improve comfort and convenience of the transit experience. And the high quality BRT service that we're planning has the potential to really enhance opportunities for transit-oriented development in accordance with the comprehensive plan Imagine Madison and our many neighborhood plans. And that's something that we are definitely focusing on at the city, is promoting transit-oriented development. In March, the Common Council adopted a locally preferred alternative for the first phase, which is roughly easttown to westtown of the BRT system. And since that time, the Federal Transit Administration has approved this project to enter the next phase of planning and engineering, which is called project development. City staff have continued to work with residents and businesses in the community and are in the process of refining this locally preferred alternative based on the feedback that we've obtained. We're looking at defining station locations and the details of the running way, and city staff will share those changes and refinements with you tonight. These possible changes are attempting to provide both greater speed and reliability for the buses, safe pedestrian and bicycle facility accommodations around the bus network, and to preserve on-street parking wherever that's possible. At the same time, Metro is conducting a system-wide network planning process over the next year to better understand how what we're doing with the bus rapid transit will impact the entire Metro system, and what we can change and adjust to make sure that there will be a really seamless user experience between bus rapid transit, the main Metro system, and biking and walking and more. So I hope that tonight you will get your questions answered about this project, but more importantly, I hope that you will share your feedback with staff. I want to thank everybody again for being here tonight. It's really, frankly, refreshing to have a meeting about something that we can look forward to in this tough time. And I really appreciate you all being part of making our bus rapid transit system the best that it can possibly be. So thanks again, everyone. And Melissa, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Mayor. You did a great job of providing an overview of the agenda, so I don't think I need to read through that. I mean, that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight, and hopefully have lots of times at the end to answer questions. And then as part of the wrap up, we're going to talk a little bit about the future opportunities and ways in which that you can engage in the project. So in terms of introductions, I'm not sure, Jesse, I'd hoped we could see all our panelists. I don't know that we can, but the panelists that you have on, that's the official term for this webinar. We've got Tom Lynch, who's the Director of Transportation, Justin Struenberg, who's our new General Manager at Metro Transit, David Trowbridge, also with the Transportation Department, and Mike Chikvala. And then we have Mick Roosh from Metro Transit. In terms of our consultants, you've got a slew of them. This is a big project. I think the top three, AECOM, the lead, Strand, a local firm in engineering, and Urban Assets are represented here at this meeting. I think we've got Julia Suprock, Gavin Poindexter, Bill Crowley, and Mike Snyder from AECOM, and then Jeff Held from Strand, and then Marcus Quinn and I are here to help facilitate things. And then there's a lot of good work that's being done by other folks as a part of this process. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Lynch.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Also, there was there was an open question. I was going to direct that.
Yep.
Okay. So We had several meetings regarding bus rapid transit and some of the benefits of it. I'm going to quickly review them. Bus rapid transit gives direct routes and fewer stops about every half mile. It provides frequent all-day service. This slide says every 10 to 15 minutes, but our plans are to have it even more frequent than that in certain parts of the core. We'll have bus-only lanes where feasible. The traffic signals will be timed so that transit has priority. As they approach a stoplight, they might be able to get a little bit longer green to keep them on schedule. We plan to have off-board fare payment. So instead of taking the time to pay for your fare as you enter the bus, you'd actually have already paid and you can just enter it, making for a quicker transition time. And then we plan to have branded stations and buses. Next, some of the benefits of bus rapid transit include improved mobility, which is actually much faster travel times and frequency. It helps support future growth and development. We know that motor vehicles can't be the only way we access our employment districts. It provides improved access to employment and education, increases the quality of life by both reducing traffic congestion and also reducing emissions. And it's really part of a more sustainable community. This is an example bus rapid transit station. This one is actually from Grand Rapids. We don't know what ours will look like, but you can see that where it has a shelter, it has seating, there's a ticket vending machine, there's accommodations for cyclists, and there's a level boarding platform so that you don't step into the bus through steps, but you actually step level with the bus. Okay. The bus rapid transit, the current status, the LPA, which is an acronym for Locally Preferred Alternative, was adopted by the Greater Madison Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and Madison's Common Council in March of 2020. The Federal Transit Administration, which is the FTA, gave us approval to enter into the Small Starts Program project development in August of 2020. And then we submitted our project for project rating August 28th of just this year. The currently adopted locally preferred alternative includes 15.5 miles of bus rapid transit, 27 stations. The service would be from 5 a.m. to 12 midnight weekdays and 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. on weekends. Bus every 5 to 15 minutes weekdays and 15 to 30 minutes on weekends. These are next statistics are somewhat incredible. Approximately 83,000 residents are within a half mile of the station areas and about 110,000 jobs within a half mile of the station areas. So this can be a major way to provide mobility to jobs and services. This blue route shows the routing for the bus rapid transit. It goes from basically West Town Mall through the Isthmus, the Square, UW areas, on East Washington, onto East Town Mall. Okay. Now the project development overview. Okay. Since the adoption of the locally preferred alternative, which was in March of 2020, many things have happened that have changed the environment. We have a new Metro general manager who's Justin Sternberg. We're really quite fortunate to have him because he was the capital projects vice president for the Indigo system in Indianapolis. The Indigo BRT is the most recently constructed BRT system in America. It's also the one that has the largest electric fleet. So by hiring him as our GM, we brought in kind of an experienced skill set that will be very beneficial as we seek to implement BRT in Madison. We've also had the COVID-19 impact, which has affected traffic, transit usage, and the city budget. We continue to have community concerns, as with any project, regarding accommodations for all users, bike lanes, as well as loss of parking. Now that we're deeper into the project, we also have more information from the FTA coordination, utilities, right-of-ways, as well as tribal time. And then, as was mentioned previously by the mayor, we're entering another exciting portion of our system development by the Metro Transit Network Plan, which will study Metro's existing routes and kind of put them into context with the BRT. So this is the BRT timeline, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it off to our new Metro GM, Justin Sternberg. And Justin, could you go ahead and outline the timeline and take the next several slides?
Will do. Good evening, everyone. Justin Sternberg, new general manager at Metro. Pleased to be a part of the Madison community and a part of this project, and I'm excited for it. So as Tom mentioned, this is a rough timeline of the project going forward. So as was mentioned, we're currently in the project development phase, which we anticipate going through roughly mid-2022, at which point that should end with us securing a grant agreement from the FTA that would allow us to move forward with bidding the project and then starting construction in 2023. Next slide. So the goals of what we should accomplish during this project development phase is refining the routes and station locations, which is why we're here with you tonight. Given that, we'll move forward with more detailed design and engineering of the routes, so getting plan sets built together, complete our environmental review, work with the community in meetings like this and what will be several more throughout the year, to build support and communicate the details of the project, secure any agreements that we need with third parties, such as potentially University of Wisconsin and the State of Wisconsin Department of Transportation, finalize our local funding sources through the budgeting process, and then ultimately should end with securing our grant agreement. So as Tom alluded to, the frequency of service, we are envisioning something that is improved from what had been in the LPA. And this is depicted here on this map. There will really be 3 different service patterns that will be operating on top of each other. So the blue line here is what has always been considered the BRT line. That would be running every 15 minutes all day long and be running 7 days a week. There would be a second line, which is depicted here in green, that would overlap and run as BRT from campus area to First and Washington. In that area, the buses would be coming every 7.5 minutes. And then the buses that are, again, on this green dashed line, they would peel off of the BRT route and run in a regular local service, stopping at local stops to the north and south transfer points. That, again, also would be running every 15 minutes all day. And then the third service pattern, which is kind of shown in yellow here, would run between Whitney Way and the Square all day long. And then during peak hours would extend out into Middleton to provide their commuter services. And so the 3 services combined would result in a bus every 15 minutes, west of Whitney Way and east of First Street, a bus every 7.5 minutes roughly from First Street to the Square, and then from campus to Whitney. And then a bus every 5 minutes or better in the stretch from campus to the Square. And so where all 3 lines would overlap with each other. So we think this is a good option to provide really good service and handle the demand that we anticipate the service having. And so with that, just a couple notes on that. You can go to the next slide. Big thing here is that obviously there's a big service improvement in the BRT corridor itself, but there's also a big improvement to the north and south transfer points, where service would be going to every 15 minutes instead of every 30 minutes. And we'd be providing that really high capacity section there between campus and the square where there's several routes patterns overlapping each other. And then a big deal as well is that, in the future, we expect to build a north-south BRT line that would largely follow that green dashed line. And in this scenario, we would already have the buses for it. And so that reduces the cost of our future north-south line and makes that project much more feasible from a grant award from FTA standpoint. We would also be purchasing, many of these buses would be electric. So both the blue and the green service patterns would be electric buses. With the service change, as well as combining our maintenance facility upgrades into the BRT budget, which was previously a separate line item in the budget, we were able to leverage federal funding to make the project more competitive and at the same time lower our local borrowing requirement. So you can see here, in last year's budget, there were 3 separate projects for BRT bus replacement in the maintenance facility that totaled $176 million. And we were asking for about 75% share from the FTA on the BRT component only. Now we've combined those projects and found some efficiencies in a couple different places, and it reduced the total combined cost to $160 million. And we're asking for the federal share from the FTA from this competitive program for half of that, so 50%. What that means is that we've made the project much more competitive in the FTA's eyes. And in the process, we've also lowered our local borrowing costs by $15 million. And so I think that's a great win-win that we've been able to reduce the amount of reliance on debt, especially during COVID and the budget pressures that we're currently in. And we've made the project much more competitive on the FTA side. So with this, I'm going to hand it over to Mike Chekvala, who will walk through the specifics of the runaway changes that we're proposing.
We're going to stop for a second to allow Mike to share his screen because he has lots of stuff to go through. So I'm going to stop sharing and Mike will start sharing. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Melissa, Justin, and everybody. Bear with me for just 1 second. I apologize. I had it to the right slide and then I pressed the wrong button. Okay. Again, thanks everybody for coming. So the proposed LPA refinements to the routes and station locations. Again, LPA refers to locally preferred alternative. It's the general description of the route and mode and type of running way that we're planning to build. So you'll hear that again throughout the presentation. So this was the locally preferred alternative that was adopted by council. Just a summary of the route and running way. So if you look at the green is mixed traffic, the red is bus lanes, side running bus lanes. And as you can see, it's about half and half bus lanes and mixed traffic. Some of these bus lanes already exist, and some would be new. So again, this is what's been adopted already. The proposed LPA refinements can be categorized into 5 sections: center running, the Rose Road extension, the Mendota Street cutoff, and the revised East Terminal, and finally revised station locations. Some of this is going to be a little bit dense, and so we're going to jump right into it. So this is the route refinements with the proposed potential changes that I'll be talking about. Again, the green is mixed traffic. The red is side running bus lanes, and then the blue is center bus lanes. And I'll go into the details on these changes in the next few slides. So the benefits of center running include more consistent travel times because you're eliminating the conflicts with turning vehicles as well as the conflicts with bikes. The bus lane is not blocked by delivery vehicles. Potential cost savings because you're essentially building one station in the middle of the street with a platform on each side as opposed to two individual stations. And so there are some cost benefits that way, as well as because you have fewer right-of-way and utility issues and conflicts. And finally, you have a better look and feel for passengers, which is more rapid transit-like. So starting at the west side, center running on Mineral Point Road, median lanes would be converted to general purpose lanes, and the curb, bus, bike, and right turn lanes would be converted over to general purpose lanes. Left turns would merge through the bus lanes, and most of those left turns would be accommodated, but there could be some left turn restrictions. Center stations in the median with left side doors, and we would widen the north side sidewalk to accommodate a protected bike facility. And you can kind of see that schematic on the lower right side of the screen. So again, the bus lanes would be in the middle as opposed to on the side. I'll direct your attention to the cross section on top. This was kind of our original proposal, which was no change from existing. Two general purpose lanes in the middle with a dedicated bus, bike, and right turn lane on the side. And then we would have simply built stations on each side. And then if you look at the cross section on the bottom, the recommended, what we call alternative 3 for Mineral Point Road, the 3 lanes are just sort of shifted. So you have 2 general purpose lanes maintained in each direction. And then the bus lane is moved into the center. The buses would have left side doors and the stations would be platforms in the middle. And then with that change, the bike facility would be lost as it exists in the shared lane on the outside today. And so to accommodate bicyclists, we would widen the sidewalk on the north side into a shared use path that would accommodate both bicyclists and pedestrians. So here's kind of a look at Mineral Point Road. We would be pretty much a straight shot on this section between Whitney Way and High Point Road. About 5 stations, depending on how you count them. At High Point Road, we would need to maintain left turns in both directions, but we are looking at potentially removing left turns in one direction at the station locations, which would be Westfield, Grand Canyon, and Island. And again, the reason for that is to have more optimal station configuration with enough room for passengers and pedestrians waiting. Some of these left turn restrictions are somewhat fluid. For example, if we know that these left turn restrictions would have impacts on the people that live and work on this corridor. And so, for example, if one of the westbound left turns couldn't be removed, we could potentially look at removing the other one instead. And there are also ways that we could accommodate left turns in both directions at the stations, but it would result in a less than optimal station platform design. At Rose Road, we would eliminate the eastbound left turn, but then we would accommodate that left turn with a new U-turn just east of the intersection. So you would make a U-turn and then a right turn. Even with these left turn restrictions, you would still be able to access any place along the corridor. You would just have to use the local street network, or you would make a U-turn. Again, we are evaluating the impacts on these neighborhoods, and we will see what will be the best design as we move forward. So Whitney Way, moving to the east. Whitney Way is a pretty similar road to Mineral Point. Median lane would be converted from a general purpose lane to bus only north of South Hill Drive, sort of the north half of it, and a shared bus and general purpose lane south of South Hill Drive. The curb lanes would be converted from a parking and bike lane to a buffered bike lane north of South Hill Drive in order to accommodate bicyclists better. And then south of South Hill Drive, we do not have any bicycle facilities there today. And so we would convert a general purpose lane to a buffered bike lane, and BRT would be in mixed traffic. Again, center lanes at the two stations with left side doors at Regent Street and Mineral Point Road. And then, yeah, so with the wider medians, left turns can be accommodated at these station locations. So again, here I'll direct your attention to the cross section at the top is what we originally planned, and basically what's existing today. The shared parking and bike lane, and then two general purpose lanes, one of them which would have been converted to bus only. And then the cross section on the bottom, it would be one buffered bike lane, one general purpose lane, and one bus only lane in each direction, and then separate left turn pockets to accommodate the left turns and stations in the middle. As we go south of South Hill Drive, I'll ask you to look at the bottom graphic. So we would have, in that case, this buffered bike lane and then two general purpose travel lanes in each direction. And buses would be in mixed traffic. And again, we'd have the station at Mineral Point Road would be in the center with left side doors. Moving to the east side, we don't have significant changes in the center. Moving to the east side on East Washington Avenue, median lanes would be converted from general purpose to bus only, and then we would introduce parking restrictions during peak periods in the peak direction to accommodate the third travel lane that we need for capacity during peak periods. So 3 lanes, no parking or bike facilities during peak periods in the peak direction. 2 lanes with parking and the existing bike lane off peak. Again, left turns would merge through the bus lanes, but some left turns would be restricted, center stations with left side doors. And this would exist on sort of on the isthmus between about Blair Street and Milwaukee Street, where we have that parking lane that we have at our disposal. So originally planned cross section on the top, our original plan was to simply remove the parking and bike lanes all the time and introduce a dedicated bus, bike, and right turn lane. The cross section on the bottom is what we're currently considering, which would be BRT stations in the middle, dedicated bus only lanes in the middle, 2 general purpose travel lanes most of the time, and then the existing park and bike lane would be restricted during peak periods to accommodate that third travel lane. Okay, so East Washington Avenue, as you continue east of Milwaukee Street, it gets there's a little bit of a transition, but between Milwaukee Street and Wright Street, as you go past the isthmus, we don't have the parking lane that we can use for space. The median lanes would be converted from general purpose to bus only during peak periods only. Off peak, they would or during peak periods, they would be open to general traffic. Off peak, they would be restricted to buses only and left turns. 2 general purpose lanes each way off peak. Center stations with left side doors. And again, you can see the simplified graphic on the lower right-hand side of the screen. Okay, so here's the cross section. Originally planned on top, our original plan was to keep buses in mixed traffic on the curb side with split one station in each direction. The currently recommended cross section on the bottom would be 2 general purpose travel lanes in each direction and a bus only lane in the middle. And then during peak periods in the peak direction, so westbound in the morning, eastbound in the afternoon, we would sign those lanes to be general purpose and open to the general public to provide the capacity that we would need. Okay, so these are the left turns at the stations. on East Washington. So again, at Patterson, these are the stations. So Patterson and Baldwin, we're looking at potentially eliminating the eastbound left turns. Although again, this plan is somewhat fluid. For example, we could eliminate the westbound left turn lane instead. Westbound left at 4th, westbound left at Milwaukee, and the eastbound left at Melvin Court. And then there are some that we will maintain. So the eastbound left turn at 1st, that left turn will be maintained. And then at Blair and Marquette, we do not need to remove any left turns to accommodate those stations. The cross section on East Washington Avenue is slightly narrower than the cross section on Mineral Point Road. And so on this corridor, we do need to restrict a left turn in one direction in order to accommodate the width of the station. Okay, so on the west side, we had originally proposed doing an extension of Rose Road on the south to extend it to Tokay Boulevard, and that would allow BRT to go south on Whitney Way, serve the west transfer point, and then come back up Rose Road, serve stations along Mineral Point Road, and then go to the end of the line at High Point on the far west side. So as we have explored this option and looked into the costs and engineering, the general strategy was that it would save time 1 to 2 minutes over other alternatives, and it would be less confusing for passengers. However, we found that the estimated cost would be $5 to $7 million because of right-of-way acquisition, roadway construction, stormway mitigation, and other costs. And so we have asked if that cost is worth the benefit of Rose Road, and we feel that those costs are a little bit excess of what we would gain from it. And so this is kind of the proposed alternative to the Rose Road extension. Buses would go down Whitney Way, serve the west transfer point, turn around and come back up Whitney Way, and then serve the extent of Mineral Point Road. Again, all of Mineral Point Road would be in dedicated bus lanes with the median stations. Okay, moving to the east side of town. This is a project that we've been calling the Mendota Street Cutoff. As we come up East Washington Avenue in the area of Madison College, in the area of Stoughton Road, we come up East Washington, we turn left on Wright Street, we serve stations at Madison College on Anderson Street, and then we need to get back to East Washington Avenue. The only way we could do that today would be to use Stoughton Road. However, we have also been exploring a connection to Mendota Street, which would be a more direct connection to East Washington Avenue. And so that is the direction that we were exploring and showing. The benefits of that would be it would reduce travel time significantly, and mainly it would eliminate reliability problems with the highly congested Stoughton Road, East Washington Avenue intersection. It would have some potential impacts to neighborhoods with new bus traffic, although the new buses would be electric. They'd be quieter and cleaner than the diesel buses that we have today. There would be no stations or bus stops on Mendota Street. Moving slightly to the northeast towards Easttown Mall, the original plan, which was somewhat of a placeholder, we would go out East Washington Avenue and then showed the line ending at the Easttown Mall stop, which exists today. It's a bus stop within the parking lot of Easttown Mall. It would go in, serve that stop, which would be upgraded to a bus rapid transit station. It would stop there, wait, charge, and then turn around and go back westbound on East Washington Avenue. There'd be a short stretch of new bus lanes that would be added. So again, that was the adopted plan. The considerations that have come up with that, the station routing and charging would be on private property, which becomes complex and challenging for us to deliver the BRT project. Risk that the area could be redeveloped with a modified street network. There are retail areas east of the terminal that would be unserved, and residential areas north of East Washington would not have effective service from the BRT system. Also, there would be some concerns of slow, unreliable operations on Easttown Boulevard as it makes the turns, goes through the stop signs and stops in the mall. So this is the revised plan that we are now investigating. So this plan would keep the BRT line on East Washington Avenue. The Portage Thier station would be the same. And then we would have a new station at East Washington and Independence with a new traffic signal. That's one of the few intersections that doesn't have a traffic signal. And so to access the station, we'd need to put one in there. And then finally, the terminal station would be at East Springs Drive. And so we would stop there. That would be the end of the line. Buses would charge and wait, and then they would turn around and go back to the west. So the outcome of the proposed East Terminal revision would be that we would provide better service and access to the residential areas north of East Washington, service to retail areas east of Easttown Mall, new signalized crossing at Independence, which would make it easier to access the BRT stations compared to the existing stations. BRT will not be affected by future changes in the Easttown area, and most likely no right-of-way acquired or easements necessary to build the stations. Okay, so now we have a handful of station refinements to the locations of the BRT stations. And I'm going to show these on a map, so just bear with me for a second, but I'm going to walk through them quickly. So added station at Big Sky Terminal on the far west side. The former Yellowstone station on Mineral Point Road is split into two on Grand Canyon and Island. Two stations are put in at Eau Claire and Whitney Way and Regent on the near west side. That was originally one station that was split into two. And Webster and Livingston stations on East Wash moved to Blair and Patterson. And then, as I just described, the East Terminal stations, or East Terminal routing results in two different station locations. In total, the number of stations increases from 27 to 31. So here again is a overall map. I know it's hard to follow along when you're not looking at a map. At least for me, it is. So I'm going to go through these again quickly. Starting on the far west side, Big Sky station at the far west terminal. Although it doesn't seem like a logical place for a BRT station, that is where the buses will have to stop and wait and charge until they turn around and go back into town. And so our thinking is that if we can arrange parking there, we might as well make it an actual BRT station. Next, Yellowstone. Again, of course, the red X's are stations that are removed, and then the green boxes are stations that are added. Yellowstone would be removed, but it would be replaced by two stations at Grand Canyon and Island. And then at the corner of Sheboygan and Whitney Way, the one station there is split into two at Regent and Eau Claire. Moving to the East Washington corridor, the Webster and Livingston stations on the Isthmus were shifted east to Blair and Patterson, and then the revision on the far east end of the line. The main motivation for this is spacing out the stations evenly and providing stations in places that are logical and make the most sense and are constructible. Okay, that was probably somewhat confusing. I'm going to send it back to, I think, Melissa.
Sure. Yep, that sounds good. Thanks, Mike. So we've got lots of activity going on in questions and answers going on in the Q&A. I think maybe we could transition now to people raising their hands so that everyone can hear the answer. So I see that Bob has had his hand up, but the mayor also put her hand up. So Bob, is that okay if the mayor goes first and then you? Great.
Yes, that's fine with me.
Thanks, Bob. Want to go ahead, Mayor?
Hi, this is Gurdeep Brar, Mayor of Middleton, and I would like.
Goodness! Hey, Mayor.
And thank you, and I would like to know that in the early slides you have shown that during the peak time there was some BRT coming to Middleton, and earlier I had some conversation with the Mayor Satya, and she was hoping, or at least had thought at that time, that some of the BRT may be coming on Middle Point Road up to Pleasant View Road at some stage. Maybe that's into the future. But what is coming on University Avenue up to Middleton, which may be more in next 3 or 4 years? Thank you.
Tom or Justin, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. The way that it's currently shown, and the yellow line, I think one of the questions was actually, would the yellow line extend into Middleton? The answer is yes, generally. The idea is that the commuter routes that are currently serving Middleton and would continue to serve Middleton into the future would run their normal routes at their normal frequencies within Middleton, but using BRT buses. And then as they come down University Avenue and approach the BRT line, it would start to run as a BRT service at that point. So really the service within Middleton, unless Middleton chooses to change it in some way, would be basically the same service as exists today, only using the larger buses. But they would get the benefit of, as they go down University Avenue, they would essentially start running as BRT and have faster travel times from that point on.
Thank you. So there's no plan that the BRT will extend up to Pleasant View Road at some stage?
Ultimately, that is certainly a possibility if that's a direction that Middleton would like to go.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, would you like to go? And then we've got Ben Lee after that.
Yes, my only comment when I raised my hand is that on the sign-in process to this, that there were several questions that needed to be answered, and that I'm 80 years old, so I was born in 1940, and that your survey did not leave an option for that. And so I
am very sorry, Bob.
So that was my comment. I can get in line on the other question and answers.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. We will fix that for next time around. Thank you. Ben.
Yeah.
There you go.
My question is, right now, acquiring bus passes with the current system, acquiring bus passes is a pretty significant barrier for people who most need the bus, especially, people between work or people reentering society or folks without a home. Is there, with us, I guess we're not exactly redoing the buses, but, with such a significant expansion, has there been talk about how to make there better access and equity around the buses?
Yeah, I can take that one. So this is Justin. We are exploring a new fare collection system that hopefully can reduce some of the barriers. I think in parallel, there is some interest in exploring a fare-free system completely. And so we're coordinating with some of the city finance department folks to coordinate studies to ensure we're looking comprehensively at fare collection in ways that make it both better for riders, easier to implement for us, and maximize equity goals.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Nick, I think you're next. Should be unmuted. There you are. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, at the moment, I only just have a comment, which is to say that I think it's really great, the changes that have been made, most importantly, the center running service and the increase of dedicated lanes. I think these are great improvements as a good model for BRT within the US, which doesn't have too many great models. So I think it strikes me that this would be one of the premier BRTs in the country. And also that I think the Isthmus in particular provides a lot of opportunities for this to be very successful, given kind of the proximity that most residents on the Isthmus will have to this line being right in the middle. I guess the only question I can think of would be like a bigger picture question, perhaps along the line of Ben's question, which might be, and if it's completely, it is largely unrelated, but I'll just kind of throw it out anyway, what the city might be doing to look at congestion pricing to support perhaps expansions, affordability for service, things like that. I realize it's not directly related, but I'll go ahead and ask that anyway, if that's okay.
I can take
Would
that.
like to take that.
Many cities in Europe are exploring congestion pricing, London and the like. Right now, we haven't seen any cities Madison size to move towards that. So I don't think that that's a near-term possibility. That being said, apart from the BRT, the city of Madison is going into a pretty major effort for transportation demand management, which will focus on asking developers to provide a variety of measures to reduce their motor vehicle trips taken. So many cities such as, let's say, San Francisco, Cambridge, LA, Arlington, Virginia, have been able to reduce their motor vehicle miles traveled by a considerable amount by implementing other measures, transportation demand management measures like bus passes and bikes and showers and the like. And so that's probably more appropriate for our scale of city at this time.
Thank you. I guess I'll just kind of follow that up by just saying I realize there might be some indirect connections, such as like the small corridors along East Wash where you can't get the dedicated lanes because of the lack of parking. So even if congestion isn't, pricing isn't available, I'm glad to hear you guys are working on those other types of measures to reduce congestion. And really ultimately because that affects other routes in addition to this BRT, which, there's a number of routes that do get stuck in traffic, which is unfortunate. But thanks for the work you guys are doing. This looks great.
Thank you, Nick. Eric, I think you're next.
Yes. I was curious about left-hand turn lanes for cars because you might have already answered this, but it looks like the buses you're talking about will be in the center lanes. So that's kind of like the left-hand turn lane, isn't it? So how do the cars go around them or behind them, or what do they do?
Mike?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I have a graphic that shows it, but I don't have it available. Generally, what would happen is that the bus would, the car or general purpose traffic would merge into the bus lane, and then they would merge into the left turn lane. I'm going to see if I can find a graphic while the questions go on.
So they would actually be a part of the dedicated lane. The car would actually go into the dedicated bus lane.
The car would merge into the bus lane, and then it would merge out into the left turn lane. Let's go on to the next one, and I'll show a graphic.
Okay, you let me know when you're ready.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Marcio.
Yeah. So moving the buses to the center lane, how will snow plowing be affected, and will snow plowing affect the other cars, or is there a negative effect of snow plowing with the center lanes?
Who wants to take that? While Mike is looking for his.
Yeah, I can take it. it really won't snow plowing at all. Right now, our snow plow drivers plow left turn lanes and plow right lanes, bus lanes, just like on Mineral Point Road. And so it will remain. I think one advantage of the BRT is that we do, or right now we're currently planning to have perhaps heated pavement for the station, so that might reduce the amount of labor associated with clearing the stations themselves.
Brian, I think you're next.
If I could just jump in quickly. This is East Washington Avenue as it exists today, 3 lanes each way, and then parking, bike lane, median, left turn lanes. So we would this is basically what we would do. And so if you can see the green line on the right hand side of the screen, the car would merge into the bus lane, into the red lane, and then peel into the left turn lane and make the left turn that way. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the person who asked about that, but does that answer your question?
I think that was Eric.
I think we'll have to assume that it did.
We'll assume that it did.
Yeah.
If not, just send us the question.
Yeah, we can put this on the website so people can see it. Brian, I think you're next.
Isn't part of that land on Pheasant View, City of Verona?
All of the BRT route is in the city of Madison, with the exception of some of the stations on University Avenue are shared with Shorewood Hills.
Right, but I'm saying if you did that planned extension down Pheasant View, wouldn't that be part of Verona and not Middleton?
That's not part of the current plan. The current plan is at High Point Road.
All right.
I don't know exactly what the municipal boundaries are. I'm sorry.
So I think we have Alexander.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I just wanted to make a quick note. I really like the bike path north of Mineral Point Road that's proposed, and I'd like to note that it will connect directly to Westtown Path via the brand new Gammon Road bike path, which will connect a lot of people with a lot of grocery stores and a lot of other points of business via an off-road path connection. That's all.
Thank you. Marcio, did you not put your hand down, or do you have your hand up again? Just want to make sure we're okay. Came down. Chad, you're next.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just have a question in regards to wheelchair access and stations, because I'm a client who uses a power wheelchair, and with the current setup of the transfer point hubs, it's already been a struggle for navigating. I was wondering if there's a dedicated area, or if you are designing the hubs with wheelchairs in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, I can.
The answer to that, go ahead, Justin.
The answer is yes. Every station would be fully compliant, and in fact, as Tom mentioned, the platform itself would be raised up, so it would actually mirror or be close to the floor height of the bus. And so, in many cases, the ramps are either not necessary at all, or are much smaller and quicker to deploy. And so it's actually much easier for those using mobility devices to get on the bus.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, your hand is up again. You may need to unmute yourself, Bob.
That hint.
There you go. You got it.
But I wasn't sure whether the question part was how to get into this or whether you were calling people by hand raises or how that was all working, because I was only able to put in one question at a time. And first of all, I've been studying this and been involved and have contributed some thoughts and ideas about this for the years that it's been investigated, and that the questions or the comments that I have is that putting it into the center lane does comply more with the FTA requirements for funding, and I see that, but that one of the things that when the study was first looked at, it was looking at the boardings that were at each stop and using that data to determine what the ridership would be. That according to the information that I got back in an answer to whether local buses would still continue to run on East Washington, it appears that that's not part of the plan. But that the concern that I have is that in moving the buses to the center, while it may comply more with FTA regulations, at what risk does that put the people in terms of being able to get out to the platform, especially handicap and mobility challenged people that are going to have to compete with the traffic, and that that when you're looking at actual possible transfers at the center, that since the buses are going in opposite direction, that they are very unlikely to have any transfer capability out there. And where will the local buses go? Will they be detoured off onto some of the side roads? And how will that plan be? I think that one of the recommendations that I made, first of all, that I've talked to a number of people about this, and the people who are not bus riders are not impressed with bus rapid transit. So I don't know how much of it's going to be used. There hasn't been any data that supports anything, and most of the comments and surveys that are received, it seems, are from current bus riders. So that when we look at the current 2019 annual report from Madison Metro, that ridership has actually decreased, and that one of the things that we're looking at is that in looking at the ridership comparisons, that the population of where we're getting the riders from is now also including the local, the communities surrounding Madison. And so when you take that into consideration, bus transportation is actually declining. Now, the other thing that I suggested was that in order to get a better idea of bus rapid transit, to take some of the current buses and operate them under the curbside bus rapid transit plan at those intervals and stops, just to see if this was something that the community was going to buy into or not. So I think that there's a lot of things that are not supported by data in terms of the rationale for implementing bus rapid transit, and that when suggestions were made for me to look at the Go Indy or at the Grand Rapids systems, that there is no other community that appears to have the isthmus situation where there's a main thoroughfare that is used to carry the majority of traffic. Grand Rapids has an expressway within about 3 or 4 blocks of it.
Bob, maybe I could interrupt you a little bit here because you've asked quite a few questions, and maybe we can unpack that a little bit. Tom, perhaps our Director of Transportation can answer some of those questions, particularly with regards to why we're moving forward and why we think this is a good idea for Madison.
You're muted.
Thanks for helping me on that. I was saying many great things. So yeah, I was typing in some answers to the question and answers, but we continue to believe bus rapid transit is right for Madison. We can't serve our projected development needs using motor vehicles. Right now, we are at a strategic opportunity to obtain federal funding because one of our past high transit ridership, but then also the system that we've developed with a lot of, actually, I'm going to be frank, with Justin's input has made our application very competitive. I was talking with someone just yesterday, and they said that bus rapid transit will be an intergenerational investment in our future. And so while right now we're all reeling from, I'm just going to say the impacts of COVID, working at home and everything, that providing this investment now provides us a transportation solution that will really serve us for decades.
Thank you. Any other questions out there?
I'm on a Zoom thing.
I'm sorry? Okay, Michael Zentz, and then Nick Davies.
Hi, I'd just like to kind of continue what Bob asked for, because this is a concern I have. Because right now I ride a local bus that goes on East Wash, and it sounds like what's going to happen to traffic in East Wash is that all the local stops will be removed. And I mean, I support this plan. I think it's great, but that would seem to reduce service for a lot of people who rely on those local stops. And so I'm wondering so are local buses going to be sort of put on other streets in the isthmus on the east side, or what is sort of the plan there? Thanks.
I'll take that.
Okay.
Well, I'll start. Justin, if you have anything to add, feel free. We'll have on East Washington, we'll have the 2 routes, the north-south route and the east-west route that combine for service every generally 7.5 minutes. And then we are doing what we're calling the transit network plan, which is a comprehensive look at the entire metro transit system and reworking all the routes and the network to reduce duplication with BRT, but also provide transfers and also take a look at the entire system and see what can be shaken up and redesigned. So the answer is stay tuned, and we will be looking at that to see where those local routes will go.
Any follow-up, Justin? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that Mike hit it on the nose, but I mean, just to reiterate, there still would be local buses going through the isthmus, primarily on Williamson Street and Johnston and Gore.
Jennifer and Johnston.
Or Jennifer, I'm sorry, yeah.
So Nick, you're up next.
Howdy. So I like the center running concepts that we've seen in this meeting. What I wanted to check on was I see that's, according to this plan, isn't extending to like the stretch of University, for example, from like Seago to University Bay. And I was wondering like what the decision making there was as far as whether center running would be feasible there or not.
Justin, you want to take that?
Yeah, I can't, or Mike.
Muted.
I can take it. Sure. So we looked at center running option on University Avenue. The plan would be to convert the inside lanes to bus only, and then have two general purpose lanes on the side. There are a couple complications. One, of course, is that University Avenue is basically at capacity as it is, and so reducing the capacity by about 33% would cause substantial traffic delays. But then the side effects of that would be a traffic diversion onto local streets, the Bluff Street corridor on the south, and then threading through Shorewood Hills on the north. And then the other complication is that there are multiple jurisdictions that would need to be on board with that. Dane County is a player. The village of Shorewood Hills is a player. And then the other thing is we're reconstructing the remaining old pavement between about Shorewood Boulevard and University Bay Drive in 2022. And we have federal funding in place for that. And we would kind of need to make, it's not a guarantee that could go forward in time without delaying that project. So the plan is to stay on the side with side running transit lanes, build the stations on the side, and in the future, if the desire was to convert those side lanes to bus, bike, and right turn only, that would be an option for us.
Thank you. Don't see any other hands. I know there's lots of activity going on in the Q&A. Wondering if anyone else has any questions. Peter Wolf. Peter. Should be able to unmute yourself.
Peter, you're unmuted on our end. You might have a prompt asking you to unmute. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I just heard something about taking the local buses off of East Washington Avenue. Is that right? Was there talk of
BRT on East Wash?
What?
Yeah, it would only be BRT on East Wash.
I'm not understanding you.
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Just let me tell you that I live on Jennifer Street, and we have now, or will have, when things get normalized, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bus lines on Jennifer Street, and I changed my bushes so I can see. I do see the street now, and there are buses going by my house all the time. And this is strictly, quiet residential areas. So I think the idea, and you talked about putting on Willie Street, but Willie Street just has buses on it for a couple of blocks, and I don't think there's any real, deal about putting more buses on Willie Street. They have enough traffic already, and so I'm concerned putting any more buses on Jennifer Street is going to be a real problem, especially because we're a historic district, and these are all incredibly wonderful houses. I mean, you know that people really love the architecture of these single family, double family, houses that are quite, there's a lot of them on Jennifer and Spate and all the other streets, there. And so if it gets to the point where families will not want to live in these houses because of the concentration of buses all the time, this is going to be a real problem to the neighborhood, to the existence of this neighborhood.
And so Peter, why don't we give staff a chance to answer, so that I think that might address some of your concerns.
Yep, I can take that one. So just to be clear, the intent is not to divert the existing East Washington routes onto Jennifer Street. The route network redesign that was mentioned earlier that will happen, the intent is to implement that in 2022, and the BRT wouldn't start until 2024. So it may be that new local routes are designed to follow the BRT path starting in 2022, and then those routes are removed and replaced with BRT in 2024. So we envision the entire system to kind of be rethought, and so it's not necessarily just adding more buses to Jennifer Street.
Okay, take your word for it.
Well, look for the community engagement surrounding that process, Peter, because there will be a robust process. I think Indira has her hand up next.
Thank you. I know there was, my question is about the dedicated bike lanes, and then when they are being turned into traffic lanes during peak hours. So can you just describe what you imagine then the situation looks like in these lanes during peak hours, because peak driving hours are also peak biking hours. So would then you imagine that bikes would use a different route, or is there still enough space for like those of us who would be okay with riding in traffic to ride there?
That's a good question. Thanks for bringing it up. During peak periods, peak direction, it would be a general purpose travel lane. Bikes would be allowed in it, although travel speeds would be a little bit slower because of the reduced speed limit and because of the traffic congestion during rush hour. It certainly would not be a high quality bike facility. And that's simply one of the trade-offs of this design. The alternative, which would be side running bus lanes, the dedicated bike lane would be removed all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So although you'd have a shared facility with buses during peak periods, it would always be a less desirable shared facility where you'd have buses and right turns to share the lane with. So the other thing that we are looking into is if there are any connectivity issues and improvements that we could make on parallel corridors like Mifflin Street or the Isthmus shared use path that we can make those alternate routes better.
All right, that's great to hear that you're thinking about improving the alternate routes.
Michael Zenz, you're next.
So I saw that it looks like you're going on the square. So I remember there was some debate about what the route would look like down there. And I don't know if it was covered here, but I'm wondering what there was some concern about putting the bus rapid transit on the square. I'm just wondering, like, why you decided on the square and what that's going to look like.
I think that I was heavily involved in that. We had about a year or two when we were developing the locally preferred alternative. We had looked at several different routes through the downtown area. Chiefly, we had looked at bypassing the square on the south side using like the Wilson-Doty one-way couplet. We had looked at the outer loop. We looked at Johnson-Gorham. The main benefits of the square is that it's direct. It serves the heart of Madison. The stations are in very logical places where you can make connections to other routes. The loop would be the alternative, which is what we do on some Saturdays and when we have to detour for some events. That is not as desirable because the stations are farther apart. It's harder for people to navigate. It's not as central to the city. The pedestrian environment is not as good. And so we're trying to build the best system that serves the core of Madison. We would like to have this be a showpiece, something that we're showing off in Madison. And so we want it as front and center and easy to use as possible.
So, and would they detour on? I'm just wondering. Would we detour like we do buses on, like certain days where there's something going on the square, or would they be there?
Yeah. So one negative element of using the square is that there are some days when we're just not going to be able to use it because of those events. I think there are probably ways that we can maybe reduce the number of detours and make them better, but the reality is we will have outer loop detours with the BRT system, and potentially detours that are even worse than just going to the outer loop. It's one of those things, the events, the marathons, all the things that happen in downtown Madison in the summer that close streets, traffic, and so forth. They're wonderful for the region. They have lots of positive things about them. One of the externalities is they have a significant impact on transit, and that's just the way it's going to be, unfortunately.
Thanks.
Bob, you're up again. You might have to unmute yourself, Bob.
You're unmuted.
Thank you again for reminding me about it. I on the last user that was there, somehow my screen came up as unmuting, and I did that, so I thought I was still unmuted. So one of the questions that did not get answered is, why don't we take some of the buses that we have today and have them operate as a BRT bus, stopping at fewer stops and seeing what kind of operation and what kind of ridership that they get, rather than presuming about what's going to go on without any data to support that.
I would like to take that.
Yeah, I can. So part of it, I think, keep in mind that the BRT project, nearly half of the project budget is related to the buses themselves, which would replace other buses that we have, and we would normally be replacing those buses anyway, as well as maintenance facility work, which again would happen anyway. But I do think there is there are a lot of things about BRT that are not just limited stops. The stations, in addition to being a nicer place to wait, the stations actually facilitate much faster boarding. And so, we can move buses through there. In many cases, the bus only has to stop for 5 to 10 seconds. And so that's much faster than we can do at a regular local bus stop where everyone has to funnel in through the front door and pay their fares and swipe their cards, which, could be 30 to 60 seconds, depending on how many people are there. So there are some very specific advantages of the stations that it's really difficult to replicate in kind of a scaled down version that you're talking about.
Well, everything that you're saying is a sensible approach to it, but that right now, that with the bus ridership decreasing in Madison compared to the population, and even looking at the 2019 report, which didn't have anything to do with COVID, that bus boardings were less than the previous years, and that what I'm wanting to have it be, if it's going to be successful, we have to have some means other than taking some guesses about this, because that what one of the things that is an advantage of the BRT system is that it has limited stops, and that's how it was first of all proposed when it first came out, is that the buses would use the same area, and that was how it was planned. And so I'm just saying, wouldn't it make sense to get some data to support this? Because other places that have put in BRT have not seen the results that they were looking for, and some have even been modified based on what they are experiencing. And so rather than build a system that is not going to be used to what the expectations are, let's find out first of all and see whether the concept is acceptable and desirable to the community.
So the parts of that,
thank you, Bob.
The parts of that I can answer is that we do have quite good data on the boardings in the system. Depending on what you count, there are between 10 and 20,000 boardings on this corridor on the average weekday. It's easily the most densely traveled pathway for transit in the city, which is why we chose the east-west corridor. And just a little bit on BRT, is there probably about 35 to 40 BRT systems in the United States. And so we have, this isn't a trial. This is, something that has been done in other cities, and we'd like to bring those benefits to Madison.
Thanks, Mike. Eric, I think your hand is up again, and then Chris.
Yes, I was just wondering how the bus driver was going to collect fares for the center lanes, because they're obviously going to have to allow people to board behind them, I imagine, instead of in front of them. And I just wondered how they would go about collecting fares.
Yeah, I can take that one. So the short answer is we're still evaluating exactly how we want to do fare collection. But you're exactly right that in a BRT environment, peak passengers board at all doors, not just the front door. And so the driver isn't kind of monitoring that as closely. In most cities, that's done through what's called a proof of payment system, where a passenger makes their payment at the station itself and then just gets on the bus when it arrives and sits in a seat. And that there are spot enforcement people who walk around and check tickets and issue citations in the event that somebody hasn't paid their fine. I think for a lot of reasons that's challenging, both operationally and cost-wise, and in Madison, I think there's some genuine questions around whether that's the best choice for here. And so we're also evaluating, basically a tap card reader that would be placed at every door, potentially along with a camera system that allows the bus driver to see all the doors at the same time. And in addition, thirdly, as I mentioned earlier, there is an active study to look at going fare-free entirely, and in which case, obviously, we don't need to worry about any of that.
And then also, would bikes be different if you put your bike on the bus? Would it be different with the BRT than it would with the regular bus?
So we haven't fully nailed that down yet, but certainly most BRT systems, the bike storage is inside the bus rather than on the front.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Again, with an attempt to speed up that boarding process so that you can just roll your bike on and lock it into a bike storage device, and not have to worry about unfolding the rack on the front of the bus or anything.
Thank you.
Chris, you're up next, and then Nick.
Hi, I have a question about the modifications that were done around East High. I guess that was the first step of you guys doing a light priority, bus priority light change thing. I'm sure it's got a name, but I can't remember it. But so now, if you guys are all moving it to the center, will the work that you just did on that area, will that now be needing to be moved to the center of East Wash?
Yeah, so
Who wants to take that?
I can take that unless somebody else wants to. So yeah, we recently put in a queue jump at East Wash and 4th to kind of field test the queue jump, which is a strategy to help buses move through the street faster. If we did the center running, then yeah, we would have to undo that. But that was kind of a trial anyway. It was a fairly spot improvement. We would move it to the center, and then that lane would be general purpose traffic during peak periods. Or I guess there's no parking there now, but off peak it would be I guess loading or it would be the current curb use.
Thanks. So Nick, you're up next. He disappeared, Jesse. Is he there, or did he take his hand down?
I believe Nick must have taken that.
There he
Nick,
is.
if you want to speak, raise your hand again. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so my question was relating to, I kind of had two questions. Both the square, which I feel like was pretty well addressed, and so I was actually responding to that when another question popped in my head. And I apologize, I've just gone kind of wrapped up in different things going on here. I will lower my hand and raise it again if it comes back to me.
Thanks, Nick. So I don't see any more hands, but I'm sure there's more questions. I still see the Q&A is going strong. You remember Nick now?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Sorry, it's a bit. I'm thinking about the built environment, and maybe was a bit inspired for this one after Bob's comment, because it strikes me that one of the big picture roles of BRT is to also think about how the built form is, how buildings are built along the line. And I guess, so, this is, I suppose, outside of Metro's wheelhouse per se, but I would hope there's some kind of coordination happening with other city departments. I'm just curious what that coordination might look like to ensure that people who might most rely on buses, who can afford, higher end housing that might be attracted to developing along this corridor, what efforts there might be to ensure that there is, in fact, affordable housing that's built and preserved as affordable long term, so that people who are who might otherwise most benefit from this service are not priced out of living near or perhaps even owning a business near this new amenity, this new transit system.
So, Tom, do you want to take that?
I will. I think I've been typing away at the question and answers, but I heard portions of this, so I think I got it. I think this is an excellent question, and we want to make this service available to affordable housing. We are currently on a separate track looking at transit overlay district and placing that zoning over our current east-west bus rapid transit line so that we would encourage affordable housing along that line. Additionally, on Monday, we're submitting for an FTA grant, which would provide even more funding to help implement the transit-oriented overlay district. That being said, the north and south routes, which also provide, I'm going to just say that the north and south routes provide access to affordable housing as well. We hope to implement that relatively soon after the implementation of the east-west, because we believe we can do that because we've used the east-west project to position ourselves well as far as infrastructure to implement the north-south relatively easily.
Great, thank you.
Brett.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm curious, with the heart of the BRT system going directly through downtown, I'm curious, has there been a study as to how the unrest and the rebuilding of the downtown will affect the BRT system as far as businesses and be able to create and still be able to create enough traffic going through there to help make sure that the small businesses and the community stay afloat with everything that's gone on?
Yeah, maybe I'll take that. There has been unrest downtown. I think that's been kind of a voice that people feel like needed to be heard. Sometimes there's just been kind of decades of dissatisfaction with current policies, and people felt like they need to make that voice heard. We actually feel like BRT will be something that helps restore downtown, right? It will provide access to businesses. It will just be an asset to all of the small businesses that are, going to try and start up. So appreciate the question. We've really undergone a series of challenges, one with COVID-19 and then with the protests that have been kind of highlighting how policies and structures have not served some of our populations. And BRT could be just one infrastructure solution that helps become part of the healing of Madison 5 years from now.
Alec, I think you're next, and then Chad.
Hi there. Hopefully you can hear me. I had a question about the center bus lane on East Wash during the time when it's shared with mixed traffic. So you talked about moving, I guess a couple of questions. You talked about moving the queue jump to the middle lane. My first question is, how can you queue jump from the middle lane? Because my understanding is it would be surrounded by, stop traffic. So how would buses get around traffic? Maybe that is the only question I have. But if we're moving them to the middle lane, can they still jump traffic? And will they still be faster than car traffic during peak hours?
But 4th Street and on East Wash, that would be a dedicated bus-only lane all the time. There wouldn't be a queue jump there. But to answer your question, you could do a queue jump from instead of the right lane, but we will queue jump effectively a good way to get out of a dedicated lane or a pull-out bus stop and back into traffic. If you're in a dedicated lane, there's no need to have a queue jump. You use the same green light that normal traffic does.
Great, thank you.
Chad?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just have a question about kind of the BRT route structure and plan. So I know this is kind of the tentative plan right now, but as the BRT system is used and we kind of see what kind of ridership it gets, is there plans to eventually expand it into other areas to make some of the commute shorter from like north to south and different things like that?
Yeah, I can take that. So yes, there is a planned future north-south BRT that would, is that green dashed line, would form the basis of it. But at some point it would be extended further north and further south and would get the full BRT treatment with the stations and everything. That would be the next phase. As far as any other extensions, we'll certainly design the systems in a way that makes that possible. But ultimately, any other extensions would likely extend into other communities, and they would need to be funding partners for that. And so it would basically be a funding decision at some point in the future. But physically, it could be done.
Yeah, we did a planning process about 8 years ago that recommended this north-south line and the east-west line as kind of the backbone of the system. And as far as extensions and new lines beyond that, there hasn't really been a lot of official planning besides back of the envelope, napkin sketching ideas. Really, this is enough to keep us busy for the next few years.
Okay, thank you.
So we're almost 7:45. I just wanted to make sure. I know the Q&A is still going, but is there anyone else who has a burning question that they would like answered before we transition to the wrap up? Okay, it looks like we answered a lot of your questions. So I'm gonna go on down to move our presentation down a little bit. Do you have something you want to add, Tom, while I'm goofing around here?
No, I'm moving my lips because I'm answering a question.
Oh.
So I'm typing out a question and my lips move while I type out a question.
That's pretty funny. All right. So, of course, this is the stuff Urban Assets always thinks is the most important because it has to do with, and I don't know why I'm so zoomed in. Can you guys see that? My whole screen? All right. Yes. Okay. Never mind. All right. So this is going to be a couple-year-long process, as the timeline showed, out until 2022. And we will have a robust community engagement process that will include community meetings like tonight's, some neighborhood meetings that are a little more focused on certain areas and topics, some tabling at community events and at transfer stations and on buses, we hope, once we get through this pandemic. And then, of course, social media. We've got tonight's meeting, and then we plan on unveiling a branding for the BRT. Zebra Dog, which is a local environmental design firm, is working on that. And so that will happen in winter 2021. And then we'll go into station design around the same time. And then starting spring 2021, we get into the heavy planning and design for 2021. I don't know why my computer's dying. And then 90% design by 2022. Neighborhood meetings, we've got, I think it was mentioned, we've got the Mendota Cutoff in October, next week, on the 28th. And then we'll be digging into East Washington Center running, particularly with the businesses and neighborhoods that surround there. Same with Mineral Point Center running. And then Capitol Square Station design, which is a hot topic for a lot of the businesses downtown and on the square. UW-Madison, and then also the West Transfer Point, which may come up as a part of the Metro route transit plan, network design plan.
Transit network plan.
I just can't get it. Transit network plan. Everybody repeat after Mike. Transit network plan. So, and then in terms of other opportunities, we will be out there in the world, hopefully next spring and summer when we can. Please check the project website frequently because we will be providing everything that we share at these meetings will be posted on there, including recordings of the meeting. And then there is an email, brt@cityofmadison.com, which comes to a number of us. And so that will, we will be gathering that input and answering as we go. And then, of course, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Let's back up to that one right before that one.
Yep.
Neighborhood meetings.
Right before that one.
General time frames. That number 2, East Washington Center running, we do have that tentatively scheduled for November 16th. So if any listeners want to tune into that, there'll be special outreach to residents and businesses in District 6 and District 2 to talk about East Wash specifically, and probably in a little more detail than you heard tonight. And then the number 3, the Mineral Point, that will be combined with also what we're looking at for Whitney Way. That is, we're looking at the week of November 30th. So maybe a little sooner than is indicated with these general timeframes, but people who are interested in that kind of specific geographical area should just keep an eye out on the website and for those meetings, which will be coming up within the next few weeks.
And on the website, you can sign up for notifications, and so that will keep you apprised of the meetings as they come up. Justin, or do you want to wind this down as the new general manager for BRT, or Tom?
I can just say thank you all for this robust discussion. I think it's been really helpful for me to interact with all of you and hear some of your comments and questions. And I hope this has been helpful for all of you. And I know I look forward to continuing to work with everyone to deliver on this project. Tom, if you have anything else to say.
Yeah, I'm going to just say that this is exciting. I believe that this is the closest to rapid transit that Madison has been in the last 20 years. And as someone spoke to me just 2 days ago, that this is an intergenerational investment in providing access to all of our residents, to employment centers, to destinations. So these are exciting times. While these times are really terrible as far as the COVID and the impacts of the businesses, I think the next 5 years looks really bright. So thank you for all attending and continuing to give us input as we try and develop your transportation system.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think we're done, Jesse. Oh, another question. Yes, thanks for the great work. All right.